Ford III. Yes, the third is practice director for the Employee Solutions practice at Net at Work, a business technology consultancy. Indeed, one of the biggest and most respected in North America. Now, for over 25 years, Harold has helped HR and payroll teams unleash the power of their business, harnessing today's technology. After a long, hard day at work, you'd expect Harold to go home and maybe kick back with a pint or three. Well, I know I would, assuming the fridge is full, which is never an issue for Harold Ford III, because he has turned his home into a craft brewery. Well, okay, not exactly, but he does brew his own beer. And why and what kind of beer and whether you and I will ever have a chance to sample it remains to be seen. These are the pressing questions Harold will answer when we come back right after these words. This is the Talent Show. Stay tuned. We are back on the Talent Show. My name's Tom Alexander. My guest is Harold Ford III. Harold, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Tom. I'm excited to be a part of this. This is really exciting.
Well, it's exciting for us too. And I got to say, right out of the gate here, I've got my, where is it? There it is. My Phillies, everything's backwards on these things. My Phillies shirt on. And I don't normally go team first on these kinds of podcasts, but I have to today because I learned that you are, we are aligned. We root for the same teams, the Philly teams, the Eagles, the Phillies, and so forth. So, and I think I see something in the background there. I got to say before.
We are very aligned. Right back here in my, this is my office here. And this is the very first Super Bowl trophy win here for the Eagles a few years ago there in 2018. Yeah, my mother, born and raised in the wonderful city of Philadelphia. I don't live too far outside, about an hour west of Philly, but Phillies, Eagles, Flyers, Sixers, let's go. All in.
All right. You are 4-for-4, man, as am I, and I'll even throw in the Union, although I don't watch a lot of soccer, or as they say everywhere else in the world, football.
That's right.
But yes. On board for sure. And of course, the Eagles won another Super Bowl this year, as we all know, and that was a glorious moment for all of us. So
absolutely incredible. My son actually goes up to he goes to Penn State. He's a senior. He graduates here in the spring, and he has, as we all have, followed Saquon Barkley's career. Unfortunately for my wife, she's a Giants fan, so there was a little bit of turmoil between this time last year to the Super Bowl, but she continues to root for Saquon. We all root for Saquon, and he really carried the Eagles on the back all season. So that was just an incredible season. I was thrilled, absolutely thrilled.
It's funny. My one line to every time I meet a Giants fan, I say one thing. I said, well, at least you're not a Cowboys fan.
That's right. And what I say to Giants fans at this point is thank you. So
we've all said thank you. We've said thank you for Saquon for some time now. Absolutely. Anyway, got to talk a little beer here.
Sure.
You have to really love beer to get into home brewing now.
I don't think so. So, I actually started because I really love to cook. I love to build recipes. I love to cook. Yes, I do love a pint. But my mom was a terrific and still is a terrific cook. My grandmother was an amazing cook, born and raised in Philly, a very Italian family. And so you can only imagine the feasts that were dinner. So, my mom taught me at an early age how to cook. And I just see it as an extension of that. When I first did it, which the very first time I ever brewed was way back in 1995, so going on 30 years ago, with my employer at the time, my boss, he introduced me to it. And I knew nothing about it. And I thought, oh, this is pretty cool, and didn't do anything with it for many years. But I just love the idea of any one little thing could go wrong and ruin the entire batch. So it's very scientific. It's very to the point. You have to craft those ingredients to ensure that what your outcomes are and what you're looking to do achieves that success. So
Yeah, and use the word craft, and it really is a craft. It's a process, and so that's just
And I don't mind drinking it either, and sharing it. I love
yeah.
sharing the recipes and the various beers that I've brewed over the years, for sure.
Well, if you could just walk us through a little bit the brewing process. I mean, just a Cliff Notes version. What it is involved start to finish.
Yeah, sure. And I'll kind of take you back on where I started.
Yeah.
Um, Back around 2010, I kicked back into it and said, you know what, I'm gonna try my hand at this. I reached out to a buddy of mine, and the two of us started brewing on my kitchen stove. And we used at that time malt extract, which there's kind of two ways you can brew. You can brew with grains, real grain. You grind the grain and then you brew in that capacity, or malt extract. And malt extract basically is just a powder, dark powder. It looks like sugar. And so we had big kettles on the stove, boiling water, adding malt extract, kind of going through that process. And it really requires four main ingredients. It requires water. It requires some sort of grain, and we were using malt extract to get there. Certainly hops, and a yeast component. And there is a kind of a series of events in where, do you want to put the hops in at the beginning or towards the end, or cycle through the brew cycle? How long is that brew cycle? Is it an hour typically, or is it longer? Once it's cooled, adding yeast. From there, putting it into a carboy, once it's cooled, letting it condition for a while or ferment, so to speak. So that yeast is eating up all those sugars from the malt extract and converting them to alcohol. And then from there, are you going to do anything else with it? Are you going to put it into a secondary fermentation by adding maybe some adjuncts or some other flavors, which I've done quite a lot of through my brewing career? Are you going to bottle it or keg it? I typically have bottled all my beer, primarily because I like to share. So I will typically bottle 5 gallons worth, which is about 2 cases worth of beer, and then share it with friends and such. But that's really kind of at a very high level. I've actually moved and transformed into an all grain brewing cycle, where I'm brewing grain. It's a much longer cycle, especially on the front end, because you got to let those grains really soak up that water and expand, as opposed to just dumping malt extract in and brewing.
Right.
So it does take a little longer to do that. However, the payoff is even better, because you just get a much more clean, robust style beer, which is absolutely fabulous.
Yeah, well, you took it through us. That was great. I mean, is there maybe one or two signature ingredients that define the Harold Ford the Third beer, or something that maybe just separates you a little bit from maybe what we're accustomed to? And by the way, we talking, lager, IP, like what do we? Is there a general, something it falls under category? You can
So
tell
yeah,
I'm a real novice with this. I mean,
that's a great question. So really, in the world of beer,
yeah,
there are two styles: ales and lagers. I have primarily brewed ales, and the biggest reason for that is the kind of the one, I want to get to drinking it quickly. The very first time I brewed with my boss, we finished up doing the whole thing, but putting it downstairs, and I said, oh, when are we going to drink this? He's like, well, come back in 2 to 3 weeks and then we'll bottle it. I said, okay. I came back, we bottled it. I said, okay, are we ready to drink it? He said, no, come back in 2 or 3 more weeks because it's got to condition and it's got to get some carbonation in there. So I'm like, oh my word, 4 or 6 weeks I got to wait for this beer to occur.
Yeah.
Lager takes even longer from a conditioning perspective, but also you have to regulate the temperature very specifically. It has to be cooled, it has to be chilled. Ales a little bit more lenient in its own rules and the yeast. So I typically brew ales. For that matter, the majority of breweries, your Coors, your Miller, all of these large industrial organizations all brew lagers, which I find is a more complex brew, actually, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So for my ales, I mean, I brew a lot of stouts. I brew, of course, a lot of IPAs. I love a good IPA. I've brewed red ales. I've added adjuncts to things. So I've taken a red ale and added bacon to it to make a bacon red ale.
Wow.
I've done a lot of sours as well, which I certainly we could dive into. But I would say probably the recipe I'm most proud of. Well, there's two. One is a Hefeweizen, and Hefeweizens can kind of, from a flavor profile, go one of two ways. It can be very, what I would say, spicy, like a clove type flavor, or bananas and bubblegum. Well, I'm a big bananas and bubblegum fan, so I've really crafted and refined my Hefeweizen version to go that route. And I would tell you, I personally feel it's up there with any of the craft breweries that you would go out and order a Hefe from. My second one actually won me awards, and it was a very straightforward American pale ale. Nothing crazy, nothing hazy, just a pale ale. And a very simple process, very simple ingredients, but it came out so clean and so enjoyable for the folks that judged it. I won first prize with that on a couple occasions. So
Wow, that's great. And that was locally there in your area, or
it was. I've won locally here a couple times in different brewing competitions. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. You're in Lancaster, kind of Pennsylvania Dutch country.
That's right.
Folks there, and well known for that. I remember as a young boy, I think I was in Cub Scouts. We made a special trip to Lancaster to learn and observe the lifestyle, a very different lifestyle of those folks. It's really educational. Well, you told us about. I'm sorry.
The greatest, it's voted the greatest small town in the country is in Lidditz, which is North Lancaster.
Yeah.
And about 10 years ago, they started a brew festival, an annual brew festival. And they had all these craft breweries come in through the streets. You could go in and sample their beers. But the very first year, they had a brew competition. And that competition I won. And not only did I win from the judges, I won from, they had a audience participation where you would vote if you tried their beer. So I was there with my beer. A friend of mine made all of this swag for the beer. So we were wearing t-shirts, we had posters, we had bumper stickers, and I won the audience vote as well. So really proud of that. And that beer festival is still going strong 10 years later. I haven't submitted any beers for it in a while, but after this podcast, I'm starting to get my juices flowing of what I might do here in the fall for that beer festival.
Wow. Yeah, that's great. Wow. Well, now there you go. You spelled out some successes for us. That's terrific.
Yeah.
But, with every success, there are occasional, learning moments, and occasional, perhaps even will go as far as saying disasters. Any memorable ones for you in the process in the early days?
Yes, absolutely. And I'll have to send to you a picture so you can see the actual disaster at work. But there was always, occasional small disasters with malt extract, because you're heating up water and you're adding all this sugar and it could bubble over. And so there's been many a time my wife would come home and see the stovetop completely covered in malt extract, and it's not the easiest thing to clean up, but I always cleaned it. But years ago, I created what I was trying to brew, a triple IPA. And so you have IPA, double, and triple. And really, the different classifications is basically how high up the alcohol content is. And my triple IPA, I named H-Bomb after my first name, Harold. And it turned out to be about 13% volume. So it was a 13% beer. To get there, you have to put a whole heck of a lot of sugar in there, a whole lot of malt extract. And that's, certainly what I was doing. At the end of that, put it in the carboy, added the yeast, took it down to my basement, leave it alone, right? Well, the top of the seal of the carboy, I went down a couple days later to check on it. It had exploded to such effect that the ceiling of my basement was covered in hops. It had exploded so violently. There were hops and beer everywhere. So
the hops had hops.
What's that?
The hops had hops.
And hence H-bomb was born. So it was
Yes.
a complete bomb.
Yeah.
But I did rebrew that beer and was very mindful of that potential scenario. But yeah, that was my wife was definitely not happy with that one.
Well, I can understand that. I can understand that. I've heard some of those explosion disaster stories in my time. I don't know a lot about brewing, but I've heard that before. Our
Yeah.
guest is Harold Ford the Third, right here on the Talent Show. We got a lot more to chat with Harold about. This is fascinating to me. Absolutely love it. We will be back right after these words. Stay tuned. Back with Harold Ford the Third right now on the Talent Show. Harold, of course, is practice director at Net at Work and for the employer solutions practice. Net at Work, of course, a business technology consultancy. But when he slips into the phone booth and puts his cape on, he's a brewmaster. And first of all, phone booths. Why did I even use that? And it's come on. Do we even see phone booths anymore?
No,
But
but
anyway,
I get the analogy. I'm there with you.
I
I'm
know,
a
I know you
Superman
do. I
fan.
know you do. Well, we're of a certain age, I guess. I'm more of a certain age, but you're knocking on the door, maybe. I don't know. Harold, how has craft brewing changed your appreciation for beer in general?
Oh, that's a great question. I tell you first, just the amount of science, but also the amount of love it takes to brew beer. Even these large breweries like a Coors or a Miller, to get where they are today, to get there, it took a lot of experimentation, a lot of work to really refine what they were going to deliver to the public. And you look at how craft breweries in and of themselves over the last 10, 15 years have really popped up all over America. Lancaster County, where I live, there are over 30 breweries in this county.
Mm.
And I very much appreciate the process, the science, but also the love and the creativity that brings as well. Uh, so much, in fact, I almost started a brewery. Quite frankly, about 10 years ago, a friend of mine and I had brewed for a very long time. He was very into brewing saison sours and had a very niche specialty there. I was brewing a lot of stouts and IPAs. So we said, hey, why don't we come together and see if there might be something here? And we started a process. We incorporated. We found some investment money, and then at the end of the day, it wasn't all completely in the cards. But I was very committed to being one of the 31st brewery here in Lancaster County, because I just love the craft of it. I love the science of it. And I love the creativity that you can bring with it as you brew.
Yeah, that is fascinating. I have to say that I think at some point in your life, there's just like, boy, I wish, I'm really good at doing this one thing, or I'd love to try this, and not everybody gets to do that. You run it up the flagpole, as we say, and see if it's a possibility. But whatever. Sometimes just the dream and the reality of getting that dream off the ground can be two different things, and it can be a challenge. But I've always wanted to have a little restaurant, But I know that and I love to cook just like you. And
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in a Greek family, so I kind of know food a little bit. And it's just like I would love to be able to just put out these family recipes I've known for years and share them with people. But it's a lot going out and buying the food every day. That kind of. I mean, there's just an
Sure.
awful lot, and quality control. You want to
What
stand over everything, make sure it's.
what most people don't realize is 90% of a brewer's job is cleaning. It is cleaning. You have to maintain
Yep.
100% sanitation. So it's constantly cleaning, whatever you cleaning your tanks, cleaning your hoses, cleaning your lines. It is clean, clean, clean. And I've brewed at breweries. I've participated in that, and it's a lot of fun to do the brewery aspect of it. But the cleaning aspect is 3, 4 times the amount of time that it actually takes to add the ingredients and get things going. So
Yeah. Have there ever been, are there any styles of beers that you haven't tried but you want to?
from a brewing process, there are certain lager styles that I would like to try to brew. I don't currently have the equipment because you have to refrigerate it. I guess I could probably sneak the carboy into my downstairs refrigerator. My wife might look at me questionably, but there are certainly the lager styles are styles that I haven't really gotten into primarily because of the level that it has to stay cooled. So that would be kind of I would say the biggest aspect of where I would love to go next. I've tried honestly. When I create my recipes and try things, it's always new styles. So,
Yeah.
even if I go, all right, now I'm going to make a stout. Okay, this time it's going to be an oatmeal stout. Next time it's going to be an imperial stout that I'll put bourbon barrel ages on. Whatever happens there, and whatever I do as far as styles, I try to get creative and mix it up. And yeah, I've definitely repeated certain ingredients and recipes that I love, but I always try to do something new.
Yeah. How, is it easy to get the ingredients and are they expensive?
Easy to get the ingredients in today's world, yes, especially because of the internet. You can go to a lot of the different brewer shops online and just order the ingredients, and they'll have it shipped right to your door. And I've done that on occasion. I happen to have a local homebrew store here in the county that I go to. I've been a member there for 15 or so years, so they know me by name. I can put the order in online, then I go pick it up and all of that. So the ease of being able to obtain these ingredients is not bad. For the most part, not terribly expensive either. The most expensive part of your bill would be your hops. Hops are outside of some of the standard hops that are generalized for the public. A lot of these breweries have trademarked a particular hop style. So you are basically paying for the profitability that they're taking on that trademark. So hops can get quite expensive, and could the difference between brewing a porter and brewing an IPA could be anything from brewing 2 cases at, let's say, $25 to $40 to brewing 2 cases at $80. Still cheaper than going out to a beer store and buying a case of beer, but definitely, as you're getting into craft and you're sharing it with others, you could rack it up pretty quickly with a hop profile heavy beer.
Yeah, yeah. Are there any connections between craft brewing? I was going to say your hobby, but it's even sounds like more than a hobby. It's part of your life. It's a lifestyle. And your work with Net at Work?
Yeah, I would say first and foremost, for what I do, and as practice director, I run the vision and strategy of my business unit. So really, vision, strategy, outcomes.
Yeah.
Very similar with brewing beer. I always start with the end in mind. What am I looking to do? What creativity, of course, but a vision of this is where we need to go, and this is how we're going to get there. It gets down into the details, of course, nothing, no different than an action plan once you build that vision. But I do think there's a lot of parallels with, creating positive outcomes on the business sector to creating a positive beer at the end of the day from a brewing capacity as well.
And have you brewed a batch or two for your Net at Work colleagues?
I have threatened to do that. Yes. So for my staff and my team, the last time we did a team huddle, which we did an all team meeting on site, I was going to bring brew a beer and then bring that with. And that actually didn't happen because I ran into a bit of an emergency situation that I couldn't brew ahead of time. But I have threatened them that the next time we get together, I will have 2 cases of, and I'm taking folks' opinion on that as well. What would they like for me to brew? And we're definitely going to do it. But I've brewed for a lot of folks. For my sister's 40th birthday, she loves chocolate, so I brewed a chocolate stout for her. I brewed a cucumber beer for my wife, which was it was kind of a light beer. She's not a heavy beer drinker. Right. I also brewed a raspberry wheat for her birthday one year. So I do brew for other folks, kind of thinking about what do they love, and brew a style that I think that they would enjoy.
That's fascinating. When you said cucumber, I'm immediately thinking that's almost like a really dry, light kind of flavor. Like it would have almost, I liken it to like a Sapporo or something, which I find is, the rice beer, but very dry, which I really like, by the way.
Dry and light and crisp was kind of the profile I was going for. Yeah. And then with the addition of that cucumber, one thing was really interesting about it. You don't get a lot of flavor out of the amount of cucumbers that I used. And by the way, I grow my own cucumbers as well, so they were my cucumbers. But when you pour it into a glass, just the nose, just that fragrance and aroma of cucumber in and of itself, that will, your nose is 80% of your taste as you're tasting that beer. Right. So that's really encapsulated when you're trying that really crisp, ale that I brewed. Yeah.
That's really interesting. Well, talking about all kinds of beer and the brewing process here with Harold Ford the third. And I gotta say, Harold, you mentioned what would people like? You asking your coworkers, perhaps, what would they want if they could make a choice? Now we're going to ask a question right around that topic on the other side of the break. We're going to wrap things up here with Harold Ford right after these words. You're watching and listening to The Talent Show. I'm Tom Alexander. Be right back. Wrapping things up now on The Talent Show. My name's Tom Alexander, and our guest today is Harold Ford III from Net at Work, and also a brewmaster right there in Lancaster County in south central Pennsylvania, just about an hour west of Philadelphia. And as we established early on, that's why I got my Philly shirt on. Harold, a big Philadelphia sports fan as well. And sometimes that's a good thing, other times, meh. But it's been okay lately. Harold, here's one for you. If you could sit down for a beer with any figure, dead or alive, who would it be and what would you pour?
Well, for me, that is an easy answer because Benjamin Franklin has one, Philly guy, two, has a lot of famous quotes about beer. Yes. So I would love to sit down with Benjamin Franklin and try to get him to try a style that just wasn't around back then. So I brew a really nice hazy IPA, a New England IPA, and really kind of establish and see how he felt about that. But another one that I brew quite often is a Berliner Weiss, which is a sour. And it's a little complicated in how that brew cycle works. But at the end of that brew cycle of that sour beer, I've typically inject it with some fruit. So sometimes it's raspberries. I've used blueberries at times. So I've done this Berliner Weiss many times, different styles with different fruit. So I'd love for him to try that and see what his thoughts are there as well, because it's very much different than anything that was around when he was alive.
Yeah, I guess the choices were not vast back in the day, and when I say back in the day, that's really back in the day.
That's right.
But yeah, what a Philadelphia figure. None bigger than Ben Franklin, with the possible exception of the Philly Fanatic.
There you go.
Harold, this has been a lot of fun. Thanks so
Yeah.
much for coming on and sharing your passion. If by chance folks wanted to learn more about your process, is there a place they can do it? Do you have a Facebook page or do you have some kind of social media where people can
They could
watch?
connect with me on LinkedIn. Certainly, I'm happy to answer any questions about it. I learned a lot from reading a lot of books, reading a lot of websites, and honestly, going out to brewers forums and having real conversations with brewers and brewmasters themselves. So, happy to share any nugget of knowledge. You see what I did there, nugget? With
I saw.
any nugget of knowledge I could, I'm always willing to share. But yeah, look me up, Harold Ford the Third on LinkedIn. Sure.
Perfect. Perfect. There he is, folks. Harold Ford the third. And well, we learned a lot about beer today, which is always kind of a fun thing for sure. You're watching and listening to The Talent Show. My name's Tom Alexander. We thank you for checking us out, and we'll see you again next time. So long, everybody.